Today, my focus is really just kind of giving everybody a background about the concept of zero-based budgeting and how that all works. But basically, oh, I did want to mention, I'm going to send all of you a copy of the presentation after this. And obviously, always come ask me questions. I'm more than happy to help. But the two big themes that I want to focus on for 2018 are cross-collaboration and really that it's kind of like a blank sheet of paper approach. So think of it like, we're opening a brand new country club. How should we run it? That's kind of how you want to look at it going into it. So use my handy dandy clicker and let's get started. So this is more just like definitional. We have not decided yet. We're going to see how 2018 goes, but you can either do zero-based budgets every year, and it can be a very easy, repeatable process, or we may do it like every 2 or 3 years, and we may use like the normal budgeting process, especially if the year goes really well. So we haven't really decided on that yet. Let's see how this goes, since it's obviously the first year we're doing it. But the goal is really eliminating unproductive costs. It's kind of like a cutting the fat approach. The tendency is when you do a traditional budget, you take last year's operating expenses and you're like, I'll just add 3% to that. And so it doesn't really cause you to think outside the box and think of different ways to approach the coming year. So those are kind of the focuses that I want you guys to keep in mind. And if you notice, the last bullet point up there is that we have to start with our mission and work collaboratively. Again, there's the cross collaboration, and that involves communication. And I did want to mention, because I listened to all of you and I listened to everybody else that I talked to around here, and communication is a huge one. If you're having an event, you need to tell banquets. If you're doing marketing, you need to communicate with marketing. And there's a lot of what I've noticed, like very last minute. And all these last minute changes cause a lot of problems for different people in different areas. If you're having an event and you need food and beverage, they need to know like in advance so that they can plan for that and have the right staffing and have the right catering available. So that's what I really want you guys to focus on for coming into this new year. Don't think of your budget as just your budget. We have to think of one Greensboro Country Club. So I've had conversations in the past couple of months where people are like, well, I have room in my budget for this, but we've got to look at the whole club. So June, it's going to be a rough month. And so that's why we've asked everybody across the board, watch your expenses. So while you may be under budget, you're helping out a different area of the club that's very over budget right now. And, not necessarily through any fault of their own, it's just the way things shake out sometimes, but we've all got to work together to really, for the best interest of the club. So, all right. So this brings me to advantages of zero-based budgeting. Helps judge actual need by focusing on current numbers instead of past budgets, like I was saying. So the example, and I think I've mentioned it to a couple of you, is let's say you look at lighting in your budget and you have Elrod Electrical come out all the time and there's a lot of like running out to change light bulbs. So maybe say, okay, maybe we don't want to do it that May. Maybe now is the best time to look at switching out to LED and doing the research and figuring out, okay, well, if I talk to Duke Power, I can get, and talk to the government, you can get like tax credits for switching out to LED lighting. And so one, that would be a capital project, so it wouldn't even hit your P&L, but LED light bulbs last 10 years. So that gets rid of a lot of that cost of changing light bulbs all the time. So that's the kind of approach and thinking that I want you guys to consider when you go into making your budgets for the coming year. Less of, we've always done this, this is how it's always happened, and this is what we should do. I know it's a country club, so it's a different culture than like a for-profit business. But our goal is not to lose money, our goal is to like break even. So we may probably, there's probably events that have been going on here for years and years, and if you stop and take a look at it, maybe there's really no turnout for that event anymore. So maybe it doesn't make sense to keep doing that. And, obviously there's going to be somewhat of a culture shift as new and younger members come into the club, and maybe you say, this is kind of old school and it doesn't work as well, and what would be great is if we could do this, and we think we'd get a lot more members to sign up for this than what we used to do. So, is this making sense? Does anybody have any questions at this point? And notice the last bullet point. Coordination, communication. We need to improve communication between departments. So when we go into next year, everyone should understand the entire country club budget for the coming year. You should understand what's going on in greens and maintenance, in golf, so there's no surprises. So those are kind of the biggies. So in that same vein, each activity is essentially justified with kind of a cost-benefit analysis. There are things, and I know this is a different culture, so we have to be cognizant, and I know we need to make our members happy, but in reading, what's the book? I totally just spaced on the name of the book. What?
Raving Fans?
Yes, Raving Fans. Raving Fans specifically talks about what is your vision for your business. And then it talks about what is your customer's vision for your business. And it specifically says in the book that you can't take their entire vision and you can't take every customer's vision and fit it into your vision and make that work. And sometimes maybe that's just not the right customer. And so I think what we need to focus on is we can't necessarily do everything for everybody all the time, because if we do, honestly, we'll probably run the club into bankruptcy. I don't know. So I think that that's kind of key, is figuring out how to mix their vision with our vision of the club. And Robert and I have spoken about this, and I know the vision now is that this is a family club. And it's supposed to be the experience from when you park your car in the parking lot until you go home that night. So it's about the dining, and it's about the pool, and it's about the fitness center. So it's not just a golf club anymore. So the key is going to be focusing on that big vision and then figuring out how your department feeds into that vision for the country club. So let's see, is there anything else on this? Like I mentioned, it's a blank sheet of paper approach. So you're really just like, here's my ideal state, and you kind of plan out what that looks like, and then you figure out how those different elements make sense for that vision. So, where do we start? What's our vision? As I mentioned, we're going to be a family club. And then what is the vision for your department? And then how can you work with other departments to achieve that vision? One of the things that we talked about is, I know during the summer, you'll have programs that are like tennis, swimming, and golf. But do we do anything like that in the wintertime? Could we do something with paddle tennis and I don't know, but that's the point. It's not my, I don't work in golf, I don't work in fitness, I don't work in these other departments, but think about those kind of ideas and how we can collaborate between the departments to have new and more interesting offerings. Paddle tennis has been a huge hit. We never had paddle tennis until last year. So thinking of new and different ideas of how we could bring people in and get them interested in spending more time at the club. And then finally, that brings us to the timeline. So the one piece of information that you will all have going into the coming year is, from a revenue standpoint, by type, you will have the last 5 years' history of revenue, because that is a good indication of what your top line is going to look like. You're not going to have below the top line. So you're not going to have your history of expenses, and you're kind of building it from the bottom up. So you're going to take the approach of saying, okay, what is my staffing need for the year? And you're going to lay it out month by month. And this is where the cross collaboration comes in. So, if I'm Bud and I'm saying, I'm going to have this tournament in this month, Bud needs to be communicating with Shane and JC and saying, this is when my tournament is. So this is when your staffing needs are going to need to adjust. And we really have to have that communication, because I know that's an ongoing issue and it's last minute and we're pulling people in and then we've got overtime, and that's what I really want to avoid going into 2018, is not having those plans laid out and having too many of these oops moments where it's like a last minute scramble to get the right resources in the right places. So basically, I am going to schedule budget meetings, as Robert mentioned, with myself and Robert for 30 minutes with each of you. And the ask that I would have that you bring to that meeting, once I get it on the calendar, is that you start with a blank piece of paper, and I want 4 lists. One is what you deem to be your critical events. Now, I know, Sarah, for your department, that's a little tricky because it's just what's booked. But those are things like the annual holiday gala, Memorial Day, Mother's Day buffet, those kinds of things. Like what has to happen? And then who are your critical staff? Because you may want to look at it a different way if there's a different approach of how you can staff. Your capital asks that are going to be for 2018. I think that's something we're really going to have to look at closely because, like Robert said, we're working on this master plan approach, and you want to make sure that your capital needs are not. We don't want to throw money at like the pavilion that we're going to tear down. That, to me, that's a waste of resources that we could probably use better elsewhere. And the last one is opportunities for change or cost reductions. So, you know, there was actually a list that I guess Bill had put together last year that I came across that did have some items on there that were just ideas of where there's potential to cut costs. He was talking, you know, like, is there anything we can do for decorations for the holiday gala? I think they run around $35,000. You know, is there a different way we could do that? So those are the kind of ideas I'm talking about. And you'll notice I put in asterisks, these lists are not limited to your own department. So if you have a thought about another department, you know, most of you have worked at this country club for a long time, so you've seen a lot and you know a lot about what goes on. So if you have thoughts about a different department and how you see it working differently, bring those to the table, because it never hurts to have outside opinions and bring that to the table and work together to figure out better ways to do things. Let's see, so I'll do the budget meetings, and then after we have those meetings, I will have some forms and templates sent out to you so that you can build your your payroll budget and your operating expenses, so you'll have it like the line items and you can populate it. But I think the biggest thing that I'm stressing here is that you really are building it from the bottom up this year. Figure out your timeline. When are you going to have key events? What do your staffing needs look like? We talked about rates for hourly employees. I think for food and beverage, we got to bring those up a little bit because we're not terribly competitive with the market. So we're going to build that budget assuming, I think it was $12 versus $10 an hour, and for bartenders it was more like, to get a good bartender you got to go to 15. You can't pay 12 anymore. And I know, you know, grandfathering people, we got to, you know, if we've got really good people, we need to figure out how to keep them here. So I want that all planned into the budget. And if you have ideas of opportunities to make revenue, please bring those to the table. I know it's a hard sell here to charge for anything. So, but if you have good ideas for that, I think that they're really worthwhile and we need to look at those things. So that is kind of my initial spiel on zero-based budgets. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
One thing I think it would be nice to, if we can figure out how to do this, is measure activity.
Absolutely.
And see how our amenities contribute to the overall revenue.
Okay.
We talked about that, and I think that would be a place like Cape Fear. They have the fobs, so they're able to see how members, like if using the pavilion for example, if a bunch of families are coming in, a bunch of new families are coming in, and they're joining the club because of the pavilion and the youth activities and stuff. And this is just my example, just because if we could figure out how that contributes to the percentage of dues, that would make cost-benefit analysis for me personally much easier to figure out. Because if the 12 million of our revenue is coming mostly from dues, how does the amenity contribute to that? And so if we do activity-based budgeting as well, I think that would be I don't know if it's possible, but that may be an idea.
Yeah. Let's talk about that some more and figure out how we could measure that easily.
Because fitness, for example, they're getting a large percentage of the activity in the wintertime. So, and they measure their activity, but if they can figure out a way how that activity contributes to their, to the overall revenue, I think that'd be really cool.
Okay. Awesome.
I want to add a few more things.
Okay.
Yeah. First of all, great job it is, and thank you for taking time to do that. It's really
Absolutely.
great.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a great job. I just wanted to ask you for 4 things when you want to start working on this budget. Number 1, it's ownership. If this is your company, if you own Greensboro Country Club, what you going to bring home from club? Are you going to break even or you going to make money? Do you going to lose money and invest your money in the club, and on the end of year 2 you have $300,000 in deficit? Think about that. Any line item. I know it's a lot of work, Nothing. So it's a lot of work. I get it. I understand. But it's your budget. You're gonna be accountable for that, and it's our budget together. It's not just your department. It's everybody else together on the end of year. So it's a lot of things. So think about ownership. Think about it's yours. How you're gonna do that. Communication between departments is important. What we talk, I cannot stress you enough. That it's very important. Nothing last minute, guys. We are like just sometimes chasing tails, but let's do it and planning what it is for the next year. You need to learn about another department. You need to learn how much money we're going to spend on maintenance. That is going to be better to put your job and your budget together. How much is a food and beverage? What is going in a food and beverage? What is going in a human resource? You need to learn. You don't need to be expert, but you need to know basic. And teamwork, again, we work together. We have one goal, and it's the bottom line of the club. I know your individual budget is very important, but it's important about it. Okay, let's go say something about that. I'm going to the board and ask for bonuses and say, we are $200,000 in the plus. We make budget. We're gonna say, sure, go ahead, give the bonuses. But individual budget, it's not good. So let's say example, seriously. Doug, it's $100,000 up on a budget. Great budget with Doug. But food and beverage, it's $100,000, it's worse from budget. How I can going to distribute that bonus to give to them, but we are on the bottom line good, and board gonna see everything what we do, but how we're gonna do that. So we need to fight for each department and also collectively like a team. You know, Ford says company, team, and ownership. So that's what we need to do. And please just think about every single penny when it's going, and always think this is my company. I'm board this is, and I'm gonna end up here to benefits from that. So it's gonna be good. And one more big, huge thanks, guys. It's not about us. It's about our staff. It's about line staff, and we need to think about that. You know, I'm biggest proponents for the line staff. First defense of the team. We need to think about that. If you're going to cut it budget, you're going to cut it hours. When you cut it hours, staff is going to leave, and we're going to have turnover. Think about staff when you're going to put budget, because most and biggest and best asset of the club is the staff. So think about that before you do anything. So thank you. I'm looking forward to working with each of you, me and Michelle, to help you with the budget. Dream big. You know, whatever you dream is going to be a little bit cut. Not going to be disappointed, because if we have any 16, 17 people who's going to give us budget, but something is going to happen good for the next year. So you're going to be responsible, and thank you for all you do. So,
all right. No? Does anyone have additional questions?
Like, I can understand the needs and the improvements and the normal purchases. How do we do stuff like, you know, I don't know if something's gonna break, you know, the only thing that I have to go off of is historical. Is it what, you know, maybe Earl knows. Is Earl gonna take on that to guess the repair cost? If something breaks, you know, it could be thousands of dollars.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, Earl does have the information from Facility Dude where they've evaluated all that, so we can go off of that. And the other thing is that we will build these budgets from zero, but I'm not going to finalize the budget and say, sure, let's go, without actually looking at historical, because I don't want us to be like, yeah, this looks great, and then I go look at last year's numbers, and it's like, these are so out of whack with each other that it just doesn't even make sense. So the focus is definitely, let's get out of the box, let's think about this from a different angle, and let's build it up from the ground. But there still is the benefit where I can go and look at the history and say, is this La La Land, or is this doable? So, but again, you know, with the equipment breaking and stuff like that, I mean, Earl definitely has some estimates in terms of, you know, what we're looking at from Facility Dude evaluation, correct? Okay.
what is my plan for the next year? We split capital budgets on 3 tanks. One is going to be capital improvement. Capital improvement is we wanted to build one more room, that's gonna be improvement. Capital maintenance, if something break down, to going into that stuff. I don't want it to mix everything. And it's gonna, sometimes lose in translations. And third thing is gonna be paid debt. Its capital is coming like $1.5 million. Come on, we don't need 1.5 million, we need pay debt. So I'm gonna put on 3 things. If you're gonna say 500, 500, 500, 800, 300, 400, I don't know how we're gonna do that, how it's gonna finance community gonna shake up. But definitely I wanted to pay something debt, because last year we pay only $30,000 debt, right?
Yes, sort of.
So, yeah. So, how much? 100?
The problem with the debt is that it's a point in time. So we're running around 3.5 million right now.
3.5 million, so.
We were at 4 last year, so.
There you go. So, just you know, we wanted to go in a construction, but, and we want to borrow next 15 to 20 million dollars. But we cannot go to the bank and we're gonna not pay that. So, for answering you, I think its capital is gonna be divided into 3. This morning, just when we have the breakfast, Tommy and Holt talk about that, what we wanted to do, nobody don't know yet, but you know now. So it's gonna be divided probably into 3 things, capital budget for the future. And we're going to the finance, and me and Michelle gonna put together a program, and we're gonna go back to you. So, just you know, you do whatever you wanted to put in the capital, and we're gonna see what when is going that belong in the improvement, maintenance, or something.
Will you use like a regression? So if you take all the repairs and maintenance that are kind of reactive in nature, and you look at historical data, will you like do like a Monte Carlo or a regression to come up with a number? How would you do?
Honestly, at this point, I will probably look at that. But the other piece is like that's part of what Facility Dude came in to do, is to let us know when everything is going to need to be repaired and what that cost is going to be.
Every piece of equipment we have right now has a date on it. And when that date, when it expires, you know, when the lifespan of the piece of equipment has reached a point where historically they fail, they have numbers associated. So every year going forward, there'll be a number that the board has that you're going to have to either replace this equipment or you're going to have to set aside money going forward to have that piece of equipment in place.
So that's a lot better.
Yeah.
One question I have for the club buildings, if that starts in 2 years, 3 years, and we start this year, are we not starting at a place where we're just building the baseline, and then in 2 or 3 years the whole thing kind of gets turned upside down because we don't have a building anymore to have kids' activities, the swimming pool disappears? How does all that stuff kind of go into our...
Well, and that's why, I mean, with zero-based budgeting, you kind of like start from scratch every year. So that's why I was saying I don't know at this point, depending on how it goes, if we'll do it every year or if we'll do it every 2 to 3 years. But if we do it every 2 years, I mean, that will be going into that year when we're going to be tearing stuff down. We'll start from scratch and we'll know, you know, you can't do this, 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 and this because there will be no facility to do it in. So that's why this approach, I think, if we get used to it, will be a good way to...
Will we get something from the board that says, that gives us a timeline? Because if the pool's dead and the pavilion's gone, then, I mean, the DRT might sink, or the snack bar might sink. Those are revenue spots. Are we going to get like a timeline for next year?
Should we are doing, that's a good question. We are doing, first we don't know what we're gonna do. To be financial stable so we can support that debt payment, or we can borrow $15, $20 million. We're going to normal business, what we do now, because it's everything it's now, it's in the future.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the question, answer to you. Yes, question to you, yes, you will have probably a year in advance to you know where you're gonna close. Because what I said before, 8 months is gonna be to put plan together. 8 months is going to be probably to membership approved and board and everything. And 9 months to be going to find the contractors and builders who's going to do that. So you're gonna be talking about it's 25 months, 2 years before we start doing anything.
So it's not a 2018 event?
No, it's not, definitely not. It's gonna be probably, I say end 19, start 20, to be going with that, if we going in that. Maybe membership gonna reject and say, no, we good what we got. Membership, I mean, who knows? I mean, we don't know. Membership no wanted to be assessed. Membership no wanted to go in a debt. We don't know. We doing normal business for the next year or two, and we will see what happens. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Any more questions? Michelle, great job. Thank you.
Thank you.